Somebody left this for you, ma'am.
Amara took the envelope without
thank
really
you.
looking at it
Oh my
because she was holding a
goodness.
glass of
I wonder who
champagne,
it's from.
and her mother was crying happy tears 3 feet away, and 200 people were in this house tonight for one reason, which was the ring on her finger. She smiled at the server. She thanked him. She did not notice that she had never seen his face before in her life. Inside the envelope was a photograph. She knew it before it was all the way out. Grainy, badly angled, shot from too far away and slightly above. 2 17-year-olds standing outside a small cafe 2 blocks from a school, caught mid-laugh, standing closer in the frame than they had actually been standing on the pavement. 4 years ago, half a school had seen this picture before she had. She turned it over. 6 words, handwritten, in ink that was still faintly wet. You never found out who took it. I'm sorry. Last time, a lot of you told me the same 2 things. You never said who sent that photograph. You never said who sent those men for Amara. You were right, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Today you get both answers, out loud, by name. Before we start, tell me in the comments who you think wrote, "I'm sorry," on the back of that photograph. Because whoever it is may be standing in that house tonight. And tell me honestly, does Yuna deserve forgiveness after 4 years? I'm counting every vote. If this is your first time here, go back and watch part 1 first, then subscribe, because part 3 is being built out of what you tell me. Now, back to our story. 4 years is a strange amount of time, long enough to change a life completely, short enough that Amara still, occasionally, caught herself looking for exits in unfamiliar rooms. He had asked her 2 weeks earlier, at the gallery, and she had not seen it coming for 1 second. It had been the closing night of the second run of Somewhere Closer. The caterers had gone, the last guests had gone, Mina had gone loudly and at length, and it was only the 2 of them left in a long white room, with 14 photographs on the walls and the lights still up. Amara had been crouched by the far wall, wrapping a print in tissue paper, when she realized he had stopped talking. She turned around, and Tae-min was standing in the middle of the empty gallery with his tie loose and his jacket over his arm, and he had gone completely still, the way he did before he said anything that mattered. "I've been carrying this for 2 weeks," he said, "and I keep waiting for the right room." "This is a room." "This is the room," he said. "Every one of these is somebody who let you into their kitchen because they trusted you. You built that. I didn't have anything to do with it, and I've never been prouder of anything in my life." He opened his hand. "3rd grade, you asked me a question, and I said I'd think about it. I'd like to give you my answer now, if that's all right." She had said yes before he finished the sentence. She had said it standing in front of her own work, in her own gallery, with her hands full of tissue paper, and afterwards neither of them could remember which of them had been shaking, and then his father had insisted on this. On a proper announcement, on the estate, and the flowers, and 200 people, and Amara had agreed because she had learned over 4 years that certain things in this family were not really requests. So here she was, in the long room with the tall windows at the Kang estate, being congratulated by strangers. "You're doing the thing," Mina said, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses. "What thing?" "The thing where you scan the room like you're framing a shot," Mina said. "You've done it 4 times since I got here." "You're engaged, Amara. You're allowed to just stand in a room." "Occupational hazard," Amara said, taking the glass. "You're a photographer, not a sniper. Some days I'm not sure there's a difference." Mina laughed, and Amara let herself laugh too, and for a moment the room was exactly what it looked like. Warm light, too many flowers. Her mother somewhere near the piano, telling anyone who would listen about the spring show. Tae-min across the room, with his sleeves pushed up, trapped in conversation with 2 of his father's associates and looking for a polite exit. Miss Whitfield. A man she vaguely recognized, older, expensive suit, one of the associates from Tae-min's side of the room. He had the warm, careless confidence of a person who had never once been told to be quiet. "Congratulations. I have to say, we've all heard the story 100 times." "Which story?" "The lunch," the man said, delighted with himself. "The little Kang boy. giving away half his lunch every day to some girl in his class. Very charming, very generous. Even then, our Tae-min. Amara opened her mouth and found she didn't quite know how to correct a stranger at her own engagement party. She didn't have to. No. Tae-min was there, appearing beside her with the easy quiet he'd never lost, and something in his voice had gone completely flat. You've got it backwards. The associate blinked. I'm sorry? She gave me hers, Tae-min said. Every day. For almost a month. I had nothing in my bag, and she never once asked me why, and she never once made it feel like charity. He looked at the man steadily. I've heard 3 people say it wrong tonight. I'd appreciate it if you'd be the last. The silence that followed lasted about a second and a half, and felt considerably longer. Of course, the associate said. My mistake. It's an easy one to make, Amara said, and touched the man's arm lightly, letting him off the hook, because she had learned that too. When he'd gone, Tae-min exhaled. You didn't have to do that, Amara said. Yes, I did, he said. It's the only part of the story that's actually mine, that I was the one who needed help. If people start telling it the other way round, then it turns into a story about a rich boy being kind to a poor girl, and that never happened. Not once. He took her hand. You fed me. I'm not letting anyone take that off you. You're very intense at parties. I'm intense everywhere. You've had 4 years to notice. Across the room, the noise of the front hall changed. Amara knew before she turned around. She had spent 12 years of her childhood learning the specific sound of her father arriving somewhere. Marcus Whitfield stood in the doorway of the Kang family estate, in a suit that was good but not expensive, holding his own coat because he had not let anyone take it, looking around the room the way an engineer looks at a bridge he has not personally inspected. Daddy, Amara said, crossing to him, and something in her chest loosened and tightened at the same time. Baby girl. He hugged her hard, one hand on the back of her head, the way he'd done since she was small. Then he held her out at arm's length and looked at her, and Amara saw that his eyes were red. You look beautiful. Your grandmother would have lost her mind. You made it. Flight was late out of Doha. He glanced past her, taking in the room, the staff, the men standing at intervals along the wall, who were very obviously not guests. Big house. Dad. I'm not saying anything. He held up a hand. I'm looking. I'm allowed to look. Mr. Whitfield. Tae-min had come up behind her, and he offered his hand with the careful formality Amara knew meant he was nervous. Thank you for coming. I know it's a long way. Marcus took the hand and shook it once, properly. Kang Tae-min. Yes, sir. You're marrying my daughter. I'm asking too, sir. She said yes. I'm aware that's only half of it. Something in Marcus's face shifted very slightly, some small approval he hadn't planned on giving. That's a better answer than I expected, he said. We'll talk before I fly back. I'd like that. You might not, Marcus said, and let go of his hand. Amara's mother arrived then in a rush of perfume and delight, pulling Marcus into the crowd, and the moment dissolved into the ordinary noise of a party, the way moments do. Amara took a breath. She looked around the long, warm room, her mother laughing, Mina photographing everything badly on her phone. Tae-min's father in the corner, composed as ever, watching the room the way he had watched it 4 years ago, missing nothing. And by the doors to the garden, a man in a dark suit with gray coming in at his temples, pouring water for one of the older guests, quietly, invisibly, the way he had been doing in the background of her life for 4 years. Ha Sung-ho had been the first man out of the car that night at the convenience store. He had scanned the street while the other one guided her into the back seat. He had driven Tae-min to school every morning since Tae-min was 12 years old. Last winter, when Amara had come down with something awful, and Tae-min was in Busan, Mr. Ha had driven her to the hospital himself at 2 a.m, and waited in the corridor until they discharged her, and had refused, absolutely, to sit down. She smiled at him across the room. He inclined his head. Somebody left this for you, ma'am. The server was young, neat, completely unremarkable. Amara took the envelope with the hand that wasn't holding a glass, said thank you, and had already turned back toward Mina before it registered that she had never seen his face before. in a house where she knew all the staff by name. She looked back. He was gone. Amara stepped out through the garden doors into the cold, where the noise of the party dropped away behind the glass, and opened the envelope. The photograph was exactly as she remembered it, and she had spent 4 years trying not to remember it. She knew the angle by heart. Whoever took it had been up in the building directly across the street from the cafe, the one with the language school on the 2nd floor, shooting down through a window at 2 17-year-olds who had gone there to talk about 10 missing years and had no idea anybody was above them. She had not seen this image since she was 17. She had spent about 3 months at 17 wanting to disappear because of it. She turned it over. "You never found out who took it. I'm sorry." Amara stood in the dark with a glass in one hand and a photograph in the other, 200 people laughing on the other side of the glass, and understood 2 things at once. The first was that the story she had told herself for 4 years, that it was over, that it was handled, that it was finished thoroughly and permanently, had never been true at all. The second was that somebody in that room behind her was sorry. She didn't tell Tae-min that night. She told herself it was because of the party, because her mother was happy, and her father had flown 11 hours, because there was no version of handing him that photograph in the middle of his own engagement announcement that ended well. All of that was true. None of it was the actual reason. The actual reason was that she already knew what he would say. "I'm handling it." He had said it at 17, in a stairwell, with his jaw set. He would say it again at 22, in better clothes, and it would mean the same thing, which was that she would be told the outcome and never the process. So she put the envelope in the inside pocket of her camera bag, and she went back inside, and she smiled for photographs for 2 more hours. The next morning she went looking for Yuna. It took a day and a half and 3 phone calls, and in the end it was Mina who found her, because Mina had never in her life stopped knowing where everybody from school ended up. "She's at a gallery in Jongno," Mina said, assistant manager, which is a polite way of saying she works the front desk and hangs things straight. That's a fall. Amara, Mina hesitated. Her father's company collapsed the year after we graduated. Not quietly. There were investigations. Her family sold the apartment. She was in London for a year and came back with nothing. She paused again. "I'm not telling you to feel sorry for her. I'm telling you so you're not surprised." The gallery was small and very white and completely empty at 11 on a Tuesday morning. Yuna was behind the desk in a plain black sweater, hair pulled back, no jewelry, entering something into a laptop. She was still beautiful, in the specific way she had always been beautiful. She looked tired in a way she had not been at 17. She looked up and saw Amara and did not seem surprised at all. "You cut your hair," Yuna said. 3 years ago. It suits you." Yuna closed the laptop. "I saw the engagement. Somebody posted the photographs. Congratulations, I mean that. And I'm aware you have absolutely no reason to believe me." Amara took the envelope out of her bag and set the photograph on the desk between them, face up. Yuna looked at it for a long moment, and then her shoulders came down, all at once, like something that had been held up for 4 years had finally been allowed to stop. "Okay," she said quietly. "You took it." "Yes, say the whole thing." Yuna picked up the photograph carefully, by the edges, the way people handle things they've thought about too much. "I took it from the stairwell window of the building, across the street from that cafe," she said. "The one with the language school, on the 2nd floor. I was there because I'd followed you from the school gate. Not in a planned way. I saw the 2 of you leave together and I followed you because I couldn't stand it." She set the photograph down. "I took 11 pictures. That's the worst one. That's the one where it looks like something it wasn't. And you put it on the group chat." "No." Amara's stomach dropped very slightly. "Yuna, I said no, and I need you to actually hear it, because I have wanted to say this to your face for 4 years. Yuna's voice had gone unsteady. "I took the photograph. I sent it to one person. I did not post it, I did not write that caption, and when I saw the caption, I threw up in the 2nd floor bathroom, and then I went to class and said nothing, which I understand makes very little practical difference to you." "Who did you send it to?" "Shin Do-yoon." Amara searched for the name and came up with almost nothing. A shape at the back of a classroom. Somebody who had been in her literature elective and had never spoken. I barely remember him. Nobody remembers him, Yuna said. That's the part I've thought about the most. Not one person in our year has a single strong memory of that boy, and he was there for 2 full years. Why him? Because he was safe, Yuna laughed, badly. He was the boy you complained to. He was the one who sat with me at lunch that whole month and let me be horrible about you, and never told anyone, and never judged me, and always asked exactly one more question than I expected. Amara sat down in the chair beside the desk, slowly. He asked for it, Yuna said. That's the thing. I didn't offer. I was showing him something else on my phone and I scrolled past it, and he said, "Wait, go back." And I laughed and said something disgusting about the 2 of you, and he said, "Can you send me that one?" She swallowed. And then he asked me a question I have not been able to get out of my head since. He asked, "Do you think he actually cares about her, or is she just something new?" The gallery was very quiet. I said I didn't know, Yuna said. I said probably she's just new. And he said, "We'll find out." "We," Amara said. He said we. I noticed at the time. I decided it didn't mean anything. Yuna looked directly at her for the first time. 2 days later, it was on the group chat with a caption I would never have written, "Because I wanted you humiliated, Amara. I did. I'm not going to lie to you about that. But I wanted you humiliated in a way that made people laugh at you for a week." That caption wasn't written to make people laugh. It was written to make it enormous. It was written to make sure everyone in that building had an opinion about how much you mattered to him. Amara felt something cold begin to assemble itself in her chest. "The dean called me in," Yuna said. 10 days later, he had the image file, and he had enough to work out it came off my phone originally. He asked me directly, and I lied to his face, and he knew I was lying, and he didn't push, because my father was on the board, and my father was still, at that point, somebody worth not pushing. Her mouth twisted. That's the last favor that man's name ever did me. I lied to a dean to protect a boy I'd known for 2 years, and I have never once, in 4 years, been able to explain to myself why I did it. "Because he asked you to," Amara said. "He didn't even ask me to." Yuna's voice cracked. "He said, 'They'll ask you, and you'll do what's best for you,' and I heard that as loyalty. He never told me to lie, he just made sure I knew lying was an option, and then he stood back and let me get there myself." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, quickly, annoyed at herself. I have replayed every conversation I ever had with that boy. He never once said anything that could be repeated back. Not one sentence. Who is 15 and knows how to do that? Amara sat with it. Where is he now? I don't know. He didn't come to graduation. He's not in any of the year photographs. I checked. And I mean I checked properly. I went to the school and asked to see the archive. Yuna shook her head slowly. There's no record of him past that April. Not a transfer, not a withdrawal, nothing. He just stopped. Yuna. Amara leaned forward. 3 weeks after that photograph went up, 2 men stopped me on a side street near Mina's building. They knew my full name. They told me I'd be useful to people they worked for. Yuna went absolutely white. "I know," she whispered. "You know?" Mina told me, not then. 2 years ago, at somebody's birthday, she'd had too much to drink, and she said something about the night you called her from a convenience store, and she couldn't understand why you were shaking. Yuna put both hands flat on the desk, as if she needed it to hold her up. I went home, and I sat on my kitchen floor until it got light. Because I finally understood what I'd done. Which is what? I wanted you embarrassed for a week. Yuna looked up, and her eyes were wet and completely steady. I didn't know I was pointing at you. Neither of them said anything for a while. Somewhere out on the street, a delivery scooter went past. "I'm not forgiving you," Amara said eventually. "I'm not asking you to." Yuna's voice was very small. "I'm asking you to believe me. That's genuinely all. Take the rest of your life to do the other thing, or don't do it at all." Amara stood up and picked the photograph up off the desk and put it back in the envelope. At the door she stopped. The 11 pictures, she said. Do you still have them? Yuna hesitated. Yes. Send me all of them, Amara said, including the ones where nothing's happening, especially those. Why? Because you were looking at us, Amara said, and I want to know who else was in the frame. The apartment she shared with Tae-min had a second bedroom that had stopped being a bedroom about a year in. It had a light table, 4 filing cabinets, and 11 storage boxes of negatives and contact sheets stacked against the wall in the order she had shot them. Amara had built somewhere closer out of these boxes. 2 years of photographing families who moved the way her family had moved, people who lived out of half-unpacked rooms in cities that were never quite theirs. But underneath the exhibition work there was a decade of everything else, because she had never in her life been able to throw away a frame. She started with the box marked with her final year of high school. Yuna's 11 photographs came through at 9 that evening, and Amara laid her phone beside the light table and worked from both at once. Here is what she was looking for, and here is why she was the only person alive who could have found it. For 4 years, Amara had built a career on a very unglamorous skill. Not composition, not light. She was good at those, but so were 1,000 other people. What she was actually good at was the background. She had spent 2 years photographing families in doorways and train stations and rented kitchens, and the thing every editor said about her work, every single time, was that the edges of her frames were as alive as the center. She never cropped. She could not stand cropping. Everything that had been there when the shutter opened stayed in the picture. Which meant that for 2 years, in this city, Amara Whitfield had been accidentally photographing everyone who was near her. She found him at 1 in the morning, not in Yuna's pictures, in her own. A contact sheet from that October, 6 weeks before the cafe. A street market near her mother's apartment, a woman selling persimmons, the actual subject of the frame, and behind the woman's shoulder, out of focus, in a school jacket that was not from Seoul International, a boy standing with his weight entirely on one leg and his hands pushed into his pockets, and his head tilted very slightly to the left. Amara stared at it for a long time, then she went back to the box. The second one was easier because she knew what she was looking for. Late November, a completely different neighborhood, 40 minutes away, a bus shelter in the rain, same posture, same tilt. The third was 5 days before the cafe, outside her own school gate, at an angle that put him behind and to the right of Mina, in a photograph of Mina laughing. Amara laid the 3 contact sheets side by side on the light table at 3 in the morning and sat back in the chair and put her hands over her mouth. 6 weeks, 3 neighborhoods. Before Yuna ever took a picture. Before Amara had said more than 4 sentences to Kang Tae-min. He had not started watching her because of the photograph. The photograph had been the last thing, not the first. She told Tae-min at 7, standing in the kitchen, with the contact sheets on the counter and coffee going cold in 2 cups. He listened without interrupting once, which she had learned to recognize as the thing he did instead of panicking. When she finished, he stood looking down at the 3 frames for a long moment. I want to take this to my father, he said. Tae-min. I know. He looked up. I know what you're about to say. I'm not asking you to wait outside. I'm asking to bring it to him with you standing next to me, and you say whatever you want to say, and I won't say a single word first. He paused. That's the difference. I want you to notice it. I noticed. Good, he said. It cost me a lot to learn. Kang Jin-ho received them in the study with the dark wood paneling, the same room where he had asked a 17-year-old girl whether she understood the risk she was choosing. He was grayer now. He had begun using reading glasses and had never once acknowledged it out loud. He looked at the 3 contact sheets for a very long time without touching them. Then he took off the glasses and set them down, and Amara watched a man who never showed anything go completely still. His name is Shin Do-yoon, she said. He posted the photograph. He was watching me for at least 6 weeks before that. I know his name, Jin-ho said. The room changed temperature. Say that again, Tae-min said. I have known that name since 3 days after Amara was stopped on that street. His father's voice was level. I have known it for 4 years, and I did not give it to either of you. and I am going to explain why, and you are both going to dislike the explanation. Start with the men, Amara said. You never told me who sent the men. No, Jin-ho agreed. I didn't. Tell me now. Jin-ho stood up, went to the window, and stood looking out at the courtyard where 4 years ago his son had crossed the flagstones in 3 strides. Nam-gi-chul, he said. Amara had never heard the name in her life. It landed in the room like a piece of furniture being dropped. For 31 years, Jin-ho said, that man and I did the same work in the same city, in a rough and generally respected division. He is 2 years older than me. I have eaten at his table. I have carried his brother's coffin. He turned around. When I began moving this family into legitimate business, I took with me a great deal that had never actually belonged to me alone. Routes, relationships, 2 ports. Nam Ji-chul lost, by my estimate, most of his income over 4 years, and could not touch me for it, because I had made myself into something the police were slowly beginning to prefer. So he came for me, Amara said. He came for the softest thing my son had, Jin-ho said. Yes. And Do-yun? His sister's boy, placed in your school as a 2nd year, on paperwork I have since seen, and which was very good paperwork. His entire function was to sit near my son for 2 years and report on what my son loved. Jin-ho's jaw tightened fractionally. He was 15 when they gave him that job. I want to be clear that I do not consider that a defense. He found me. He found nothing for 18 months, Jin-ho said. My son sat alone, spoke to nobody, and gave that boy nothing to write down. Then a new girl sat in an empty seat, and everything about him changed inside a week. He looked at Amara without flinching. Do-young did not create your danger. He observed it accurately. The photograph was a test, Amara said. Yes. Say the rest of it. Jin-ho held her gaze. They put that image in front of the whole school to see what my son would do. If he had let it stand, if he had distanced himself, if he had allowed the school to write you off as an embarrassment, you would have been of no further interest to anybody, and you would never have known any of this existed. He paused. Instead, he walked into the dean's office and refused, on the record, in front of an administrator, to sign a statement separating himself from you. He proved to them, in the clearest possible terms, that you were worth something to him. Amara turned and looked at Tae-min. He had gone very pale. That's why they came for me 3 weeks later, she said. That is why, said his father. I did that, Tae-min said. It came out almost inaudible. You were 17, and you defended someone you loved in the only way you had available, Jin-ho said. You did nothing wrong. You were read by a professional, and you did not know you were being read. That is not a moral failure. It is a lack of information, and the person responsible for you not having that information is me. Amara put her hand flat on the desk. You told my mother it was over, she said. At my graduation, in front of everybody. You said the threat had been resolved thoroughly and permanently, and my mother's shoulders came down, and she believed you, and she has slept for 4 years on the strength of that sentence. I did. Was it true? Kang Jin-ho did not look away, and she would remember afterwards that he did not take even 1 second to consider softening it. No, he said. Nam Ji-chul is alive. He has been in Seoul Detention Center for 3 years and 8 months on a charge unrelated to you, brought by a prosecutor I helped considerably. He is 63 years old, and he will be released in approximately 14 months, and I have known that the entire time. Amara heard a sound and realized it was her own breath. You lied to my mother. I gave your mother the only thing I had to give her, Jin-ho said quietly. She was a woman who had just found out her child had been hunted, at a graduation ceremony, in a country she had lived in for 1 year. I could offer her a true sentence that would have taken her sleep for the rest of her life, or a false one that would give it back. I chose. I am not asking you to agree with the choice. He picked up the reading glasses again and turned them over in his hands. I am telling you that I made it deliberately, and that I would want you to know it was deliberate, rather than think me careless. And me? Amara said. What was I offered? The same lie, Jin-ho said. Because you were 17 and about to go to art school. He set the glasses down. That was the error, not your mother. Your mother needed it. You never did. I looked at you standing in this room at 17, telling me you weren't going anywhere, and I still managed to decide you were a girl who needed to be handled. He inclined his head very slightly. I misjudged you. I don't say that often. Take it seriously. Amara stood in the middle of the study for a moment, in a house where every single person had been protecting her by keeping her stupid. Where is Shin Do-yoon now? She asked. I don't know, Jin-ho said. And that is the sentence in all of this that frightens me. Miss Park's classroom at Daehan Elementary smelled of chalk and floor polish, and, on Thursdays, of the fish the cafeteria served whether anybody wanted it or not. Kang Tae-min was 8 years old and small for it, and he sat in the third row with his hands in his lap and a lunch bag that was empty, because it had been empty for 6 days and he had kept bringing it anyway, because bringing an empty bag was less noticeable than bringing none. On the 7th day, the girl 2 rows in front turned around. She had 2 long braids and a gap in her front teeth, and a green backpack with a broken zipper on the front pocket, and she did not ask him anything. She simply put half her lunch on his desk and turned back around and kept talking to the girl beside her about a television program, as if the food had arrived there on its own. She did it the next day, and the day after. On the 4th day, he said, very quietly, You don't have to. Wait, hold up. She spun round in her chair with one hand raised flat, stopping the world so she could catch up to it. Are you telling me you don't want it? No. Okay then, she said, and turned back around. He asked her once, weeks later, why she never made him say thank you. Because then it's a thing, Amara said, in the tone of somebody explaining something extremely obvious to somebody extremely slow. And if it's a thing, you'll stop taking it, and then you'll be hungry, and that's worse than me not getting a thank you. She thought about it. Also, my grandma says if you have to be thanked for it, you didn't really give it. It rained on a Tuesday in the 2nd week of June. He had no umbrella. He was standing under the overhang at the school gate, calculating how wet he was prepared to get, when a green backpack appeared beside him, and an umbrella was pushed into his hand. Mine's closer, Amara said, meaning her house, which he found out 4 years later was a lie by about 25 minutes. You'll get soaked. Wait, hold up. Do you want the umbrella, or do you want to have an argument? He took the umbrella. She ran out into it, and turned around halfway across the yard, walking backwards in the rain, and shouted the thing he would carry for the next 14 years. Hey, are we friends, or are we best friends? Because they're different, and you have to pick. Tae-min stood under a borrowed umbrella with his mouth open. Can I think about it? He called. You can think about it forever, Amara yelled, delighted, and turned around and ran, and 2 weeks later her family was gone with no notice at all, and he did not see her again for 10 years. He was still thinking about it. The root was the thing that would not leave her alone. Amara lay awake at 4 in the morning with Tae-min asleep beside her, and went over it again, the way she had gone over it perhaps 20 times since the study. The side street near Mina's building. She had used it exactly twice before that night. Twice. It was a shortcut she had found by accident. It saved 10 minutes, and she had not told a single person about it, because it was not the kind of thing anybody tells anybody. Do-yoon had been following her for 6 weeks. Fine, but Do-yoon had been in a school uniform in every frame she had of him, and the school gate closed at 5, and she had gone that way at 6:40 in the evening, and there had been a man at each end of that street. Not one man following, 2 men positioned. Positioned means somebody knew in advance. She got up at 5 and made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table until Tae-min came out at 5:30 and found her there. Who knew about the shortcut? She said. He stopped in the doorway. Amara. I never told Mina. I never told my mother. I only ever used it twice. She looked up. Somebody put a man at each end of a street that I had walked down 2 times in my life. Do-yoon was 15 and in a school jacket. He wasn't running that. Tae-min came and sat down opposite her, slowly, and put both hands flat on the table. I know, he said. Amara heard it land. You know, she repeated. I've known for about 6 months, Tae-min said. And to his credit, he did not look away, and to his credit, he did not begin with an excuse. There was a leak inside this family. My father found it 2 years ago. I found out 6 months ago. I have not told you, and I have spent every one of those 6 months telling myself I was choosing the right week to do it, and there was never a right week, because there was never going to be one. The kitchen was very quiet. Who? Amara said. Tae-min said the name. It was, she thought afterwards, the single worst sentence anyone had ever said to her, and it was only 3 syllables long. They did it in the study, because Kang Jin-ho insisted, and because Amara insisted on being in the room. Ha Sung-ho came in, and stood with his hands at his sides. He was 56. He had worked for this family for 22 years. He did not look at Tae-min, and he did not look at Jin-ho. He looked directly at Amara, and he did not sit down when he was told to. Miss Whitfield, he said, did you give them the street? Yes. Amara had been ready for an argument. She had built a whole architecture for an argument on the drive over, and it fell down in 1 syllable. Say it properly, Jin-ho said, from his chair. She's owed the whole of it. I gave them your school timetable in September, Ha Sung-ho said. His voice was completely steady and completely empty. I gave them the address of your mother's apartment in October. I told them about the side street on the 14th of November, at 11:40 at night, from a public phone near Yeongdeungpo Station, because I had followed you home the previous Thursday and seen you use it. He paused. I did not know what they intended to do with it. That is not a defense. I knew it was not going to be nothing. Why? Ha Sung-ho's mouth moved. My son, he said. Amara felt the floor go slightly. His name is Ha Min-jun, he said. He was 15. He was taken outside a study academy in Nawan on the 2nd of September, and I received a photograph of him 19 minutes later, and I was told what I would be doing from then on. His hands were shaking now, and he was clearly furious with them for it. They sent me 1 photograph every fortnight. Every fortnight for 4 years. He gets taller in them. In the 2nd year he stopped looking at the camera. Nobody said anything. I could have come to you, Ha said to Jin-ho, and his voice finally broke, and it was worse for how briefly it did. I know exactly what you would have done. You'd have gone to the mattresses over a driver's son. You would genuinely have done that, and I know it. And I looked at the photograph and I did the arithmetic, and I decided that a war takes months, and my boy had days. He wiped his face once, roughly. I sold a 17-year-old girl to buy my son another week. I have known every single day exactly what I am. Amara sat down. You drove me to the hospital, she said. Last winter, you stood in the corridor for 5 hours. Yes, ma'am. Why? Ha Sung-ho looked at her, and for the first time something came apart in his face entirely. Because I would like there to be one thing, he said. Amara turned to Kang Jin-ho. You've known for 2 years. Yes. And he still works here. Yes. Jin-ho did not blink. For 2 years, I have allowed Ha Sung-ho to remain the trusted channel between this house and Namgi Chol's organization, and for 2 years, everything that has gone down that channel has been chosen by me. They believe they know where my accounts sit. They believe they know how many men I retain. They believe they know my son's schedule on Thursdays. He folded his hands. They believe those things because I fed them, through this man, deliberately, and he has known it for 18 of those 24 months and has continued because it is the only route he has left to his child. You used him, Tae-min said. I used the betrayal, his father said. The man was already broken. I chose whether that break stayed a hole in my wall or became a door I controlled. And me? Amara said. Jin-ho looked at her. You were already safe, he said. You had 2 men within 100 meters of you at all times from that November onward, and you have never once seen them, and that was the point. You were safe, and you were also, incidentally, the thing that kept the channel credible. Say what that means. It means, Kang Jin-ho said, that if I had removed you from the picture entirely, if I had sent you abroad, they would have known I had found my leak. He held her eyes. You stayed exposed on paper. You were never exposed. In fact, I have spent 4 years absolutely certain of the difference. And I understand that from where you are sitting, there is no difference at all. Amara stood up. I need air, she said. Her mother called on Thursday evening, in the middle of everything, about nothing. There was the nicest man on the bus today, Rachel Whitfield said, in the tone she used for small pleasant things. Older, very good English. He asked if I was Ghanaian, and I said my mother was, and he said he could hear it, which frankly, at my age, is a compliment. That's nice, Mom. He knew Efwa's name. Amara stopped walking. She was on a street in Insadong with her phone against her ear and a bag of prints in her other hand, and she stopped so abruptly that a man behind her had to step around her. Say that again, he said. Efwa, that's a good name. That's a Friday name, her mother said, laughing. Which is right, isn't it? That's what your grandmother always said, born on Friday. Isn't that something? A Korean gentleman on the 271 bus, knowing that. Mom. Amara kept her voice completely level, and she would be proud of that afterwards, and slightly disturbed by how easily it came. Did you tell him your mother's name? A pause. I don't think so, Rachel said. No, I didn't. He said it first. Another pause, longer. Amara? It's fine. It is not fine. I can hear your voice. Where are you now? At home. Why? Stay there, Amara said. I'm coming over. And Mom, don't open the door for anybody, not anybody, until I get there. Nobody touched her mother. That was the entire point. Nobody followed her. Nobody threatened her. Nobody laid a hand on a 51-year-old woman on the 271 bus. A polite man sat beside her for 6 stops and said the name of a woman who had been dead for 9 years. A name that existed in exactly 2 places in this world, on a headstone in Georgia, and taped to the inside flap of a green backpack in a 3rd-grade classroom, and then he got off at Anguk and was gone. It was not a threat. It was a receipt. We can reach further back than you can. Amara sat in her mother's kitchen at midnight with the chain on the door and her mother finally asleep down the hall, and when Tae-min arrived, she was already standing. Don't, she said. I haven't said anything. You were going to say you're handling it. He stopped in the doorway with his coat still on. Yes, he said. I was. My mother has no men within 100 meters of her, does she? Amara said. Your father's arithmetic covered me. It never covered her, because she isn't leverage. She's just a woman who happens to have raised the leverage. Tae-min said nothing, which was the answer. My father flew home on Sunday, Amara said. He shook your hand at that party, and asked to talk to you before he left, and you had a whole hour with him, and you told him nothing. He's a civilian. He's my father. Her voice cracked for the first time. He moved us 6 times in 12 years. 6, Singapore, London, back to the States, here. He took every one of those postings because they paid a little more, or they were a little safer, or they got us out of a place he didn't like the feel of, and he did all of that with the specific, boring, unglamorous intention of keeping his daughter alive. She was shaking, and 2 men put hands on me on a Korean side street, and a stranger says my grandmother's name to my mother on a bus, and Marcus Whitfield doesn't know any of it, because a family that isn't his decided he didn't need to. Amara, do you know what he'd have done if you'd told him at 17? Taken you out of the country. Yes, she almost laughed. Yes. Immediately. Badly. Probably wrongly. It would have been the wrong call, and he would have made it, and it was his to make. Tae-min took his coat off very slowly and set it on the back of a chair. You're not wrong, he said. I know I'm not. I'm not arguing, I'm agreeing, and I need you to actually hear that I'm agreeing, because I think you've stopped expecting me to. He sat down. I have made the same decision, in some form, roughly once a year, since I was 17. There are things about my family I'm not ready to explain yet. I said that to you in a school corridor at 17, and you let me have it. And I have been quietly living off the credit of that sentence ever since. Yes, it was charming at 17, it was, Amara said. It really was. And at 22, it's a pattern, Tae-min said. She put her hands over her face. You keep protecting me from information, she said, through them. That's not love, that's management. He didn't answer for a while. When she took her hands down, he was looking at the table. My father ran an operation for 2 years, using the danger to you as a load-bearing element, Tae-min said. And when he explained it to me 6 months ago, my actual first reaction, before any other one, was that it was elegant. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. That's what I'm frightened of, not him, that I understood it immediately. Amara took the ring off. She did it slowly, and without drama, and she set it on her mother's kitchen table between them, and Tae-min looked at it and did not reach for it. I'm not leaving you, she said. Look at me. I need you to hear the exact sentence and not a different one. I am not leaving you. I'm not calling anything off. And if you go home tonight and tell yourself I've ended it, you will be lying to yourself the way this family lies to everybody. Then what is this? It's me not wearing it, Amara said. Until there is nothing left you haven't told me. He nodded, once, and his jaw was working. That's fair. I know it's fair. I'd like to say something, and I'd like you not to take it as a negotiation. He put his hand flat beside the ring without touching it. I spent 10 years remembering you. 10 years. Every detail, the backpack, the umbrella, the way you said hold up. I was extremely proud of that. I thought it was the best thing about me. He swallowed. And I have spent 4 years standing next to you not telling you things. I got the 10 years right and the 4 years completely wrong. And the 4 years are the ones that were actually mine to get right. Amara called her father at 3 a.m, Doha time, and told him all of it, every single piece, in order, for 50 minutes, while he said nothing at all. When she finished, there was a long silence on the line. Baby girl, Marcus Whitfield said, I want you to answer me one question, and I want the true answer. Okay, are you safe right now, tonight, in that room? Yes. All right. She heard him breathe out. Then I'm going to say the rest of it, and then I'm going to book a flight. Dad, they knew people were hunting my daughter. His voice was very quiet, which was how she had always known when it was bad. And they sat in a room and decided I didn't need to know. Some man I met once, in a good suit, in a house with a courtyard, decided that. A pause. I moved you 6 times to keep you safe, Amara. 6. You hated me for 4 of them, and a stranger decided you were safer without me knowing. He thought he was protecting Mom. He was protecting himself from a difficult conversation, and he has a better vocabulary for it than most men, Marcus said. I've been in rooms with men like that my whole career. They always sound reasonable. That's the whole trick. Amara sat in her mother's dark kitchen and cried, finally, properly, for the first time in 4 years. Are you going to tell me not to marry him? She said. No? Why not? Because he corrected a grown man at his own engagement party about who gave who the lunch, her father said. I watched him do it. He didn't take the version that made him look good. That's a small thing, and it's not nothing. A pause. But I'm going to sit down with that boy's father, and one of us is going to enjoy it a great deal less than the other. 2 things I want from you before this next part, because it's the one you've been waiting for. First, was Amara right to take the ring off? Say it in the comments. I want to see this argument happen. Second, and I mean this one, if it were your child, would you have wanted Kang Jin-ho's lie, or the truth that takes your sleep for the rest of your life? Tell me. I read all of them. Now let's finish it. Nam Teo came to the gallery on a Wednesday afternoon, in daylight, alone, and bought a print. He was 31 and he looked like a man who worked in finance and had never raised his voice in his life. He spent 11 minutes in front of a photograph of a Nepali family in a rented apartment in Ansan, 3 generations in a kitchen the size of a car, and then he came to the desk and asked, politely, in careful English, whether the artist was present. I'm the artist, Amara said. Ah, he smiled. I'm very glad. It's a beautiful show. My father would have liked it. He came here from nothing as well. Amara's hands were completely steady, and she would think about that afterwards. The fact that her hands were steady, and her voice was normal, and something in the back of her skull was screaming. Which one would you like? This one. He indicated the Ansan family. Do you know their names? I don't give out names. No, he agreed. You wouldn't. That's the correct answer. He took out a card and set it on the desk, face up, and did not push it toward her. Namteo, my father is unwell. He's in Seoul Detention Center, which I imagine you now know, and he comes out in 14 months, which I imagine you also know. His smile did not change at all. I have no interest in you, Miss Whitfield. I want you to understand that clearly. Whatever was decided about you 4 years ago was decided by an old man who was angry and is now 63 and diabetic. I'm not angry. I'm just tidying. Tidying. There is a man in that house who has been lying to me for 2 years, Teo said pleasantly. I would like him. That's all I want. Give me Ha Sung-ho, and this entire thing closes on Friday, and you never see me again, and I'll pay for the print. He tapped the card once. You're the only person in this story who has no reason to protect that man. He sold you. I'd have thought you'd be glad to be asked. Amara looked at him for a long moment. You're not tidying, she said. You're 4 years behind, and you've just found that out. And you came to a gallery on a Wednesday to ask the fiancé because you've run out of better doors. Something flickered, very briefly, behind Namteo's face. Enjoy the show, he said, and turned to leave. He was 6 steps from the door when Amara saw him. Not Tae-min, the man by the far wall, standing in front of a photograph he had been standing in front of for the entire 11 minutes without moving, hands pushed into his pockets, weight entirely on one leg, head tilted very slightly to the left. He was 22, now he had a beard. He was 2 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, and there was nothing in his face that she recognized at all. Amara did not recognize his face. She recognized how he stood. She lifted her phone and took a photograph of the room, exactly the way she had taken 10,000 photographs, subject-centered and everything alive at the edges, and neither man looked up, because a woman photographing her own gallery is the least remarkable thing in the world. Then she put the phone down and said, clearly, across the space, Shin Do-yoon. He turned around. It took less than half a second, and he caught it immediately and turned back, and it was already far too late, and both of them knew it. 6 weeks, Amara said. October, at the Persimmon stall in Mangwon. November, the bus shelter on Dongle Row. 5 days before the cafe, outside my school gate, behind Mina. She came out from behind the desk. You're in all 3, out of focus, in the background, standing exactly the way you're standing right now. I have the negatives. I've had them in a box in my apartment for 4 years. Namteo had stopped at the door. I never cropped a single frame in my life, Amara said. Everybody in my industry thinks that's a stylistic choice. The case took 9 weeks. It was, Tae-min said afterwards, the least dramatic 9 weeks of his life, and he had never been so frightened. There was no night of it. That was the thing Amara had not expected, and had to keep explaining to Mina. There was no moment where anybody kicked a door. There were prosecutors' offices and photocopying, and a woman from the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office named Prosecutor Sim, who drank 6 coffees a day and asked the same question 14 different ways. What there was this. 3 photographs establishing that Shin Do-yoon had surveilled a minor over 6 weeks in 2021. A confession from Ha Sung-ho, given in full, over 4 days, with a lawyer his employer paid for and did not instruct. And an archive. That was the part that nearly broke her. They want the whole thing, Amara said, in the apartment, at 1 a.m, with her hands flat on the light table. Not the 3 frames, all 11 boxes. Every negative I shot in this city for 4 years. Why? Because they can't take my word that only 3 frames matter. If I select, I'm a witness who curated. If I hand it all over, it's an unedited record, and it's unimpeachable. She stared at the boxes. Prosecutor Sim was very kind about it. She was so kind about it. And then she explained that of course it becomes evidence, and evidence gets disclosed, and disclosure means the defense sees it, and the defense in this case is a criminal organization with a functioning office. Tae-min understood before she said it. The families, he said. 41 households. Amara's voice went thin. Somewhere closer is 14 prints. 14. The boxes are 4 years of everybody who ever let me into a kitchen. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes. At least 9 of those families are undocumented. 2 of them are undocumented in a way that involves people who would be extremely interested to know where they sleep. They let me photograph them because I sat in their living rooms and I promised them, personally, with my own mouth, that I decided where their faces went. Then don't give it to them. Then Nam Teo walks, and Ha Sung-ho goes to prison alone, and his son never comes home. She laughed, and it was horrible. There is no version of this where I come out clean. I've been looking for 4 days. There isn't one. They fought about it for 2 days. She fought her lawyer for another 4. In the end, she gave them everything except a category, and it took a judge to allow it. Every frame in 11 boxes, minus a defined set of interior residential images, with no bearing on the timeline, sealed and withheld, argued for over 9 hours by a woman named Prosecutor Sim, who Amara would be grateful to for the rest of her life. She won that. She did not win all of it. 3 exterior frames stayed in, because they were street photographs from the correct months, and no judge on earth was going to withhold street photographs from the correct months. In one of them, on a pavement in Ansan, a grandmother is carrying a child on her hip and laughing at something out of frame. Amara looked at that image for a very long time before she signed. They found Ha Min-jun on a Tuesday in an apartment in Incheon, on information his father gave up in the 2nd hour of the 4th day. Amara was not there. She got it in pieces afterwards, from Tae-min, who told her all of it, unprompted, including the parts that made him look bad, which she noticed, and which she did not mention at the time. Ha Sung-ho insisted on going. Jin-ho refused. Ha went anyway, because a man who has already lost everything is very difficult to give orders to, and he went through the door of that apartment ahead of men who were paid to go through doors and who were extremely annoyed about it. He was shot twice, in the hip and the thigh, by a 24-year-old who panicked. He was on the floor of the hallway when they brought his son out, and by every account he was, at that moment, entirely calm. He had been carrying a photograph in his jacket for 4 years, the most recent one, and he had it in his hand. Ha Min-jun was 19. He had been 15 when they took him. He walked past his father on the floor and stopped, and looked down, and said, "Dad," in a completely flat voice, and then a paramedic moved him along. Nam Teo was arrested 11 days later at Incheon Airport with a boarding pass to Manila on charges relating to the abduction and unlawful confinement of a minor between 2021 and 2025, and to the surveillance and attempted abduction of Amara Whitfield in November 2021. Shin Do-yoon was arrested the same morning at his sister's apartment in Suwon. Prosecutor Sim called Amara personally to tell her, "I want you to hear the names from a person and not from the news," she said. Nam Teo, Shin Do-yoon. Both in custody, both charged, and I want to tell you something else that I don't usually say. A pause. Without those 3 photographs, I had nothing that put Shin near you before the cafe. Nothing. Your negatives are the spine of this case. Amara sat down on the floor of her studio. "There was another way to do this," she said. "Wasn't there?" "There's always another way to do it," Prosecutor Sim said. "In this city, historically, for families like the one you're marrying into, there has almost always been another way to do it. Your fiancé's father is very familiar with the other way." Amara could hear her shrug down the phone. "You did it the slow way, and it took 9 weeks, and it cost you something you can't get back. I'm not going to tell you that's better. I'm going to tell you it's on a record now. And records don't die when the men who made them die." It rained the day the charges were filed. Amara came out of the prosecutor's office with her bag over her head and stopped on the steps, and Tae-min was on the pavement below her, holding an umbrella, and neither of them said anything for a second because they both got there at exactly the same time. "Don't," she said. "I wasn't going to say anything. You were going to say something about the umbrella." "I was going to say a great deal about the umbrella," Tae-min said. "I've been standing here for 20 minutes composing it. Keep it." "For how long?" "Forever," Amara said. "You can think about it forever." He came up 2 steps and held it over both of them, badly, so that his own shoulder went dark with rain within about 10 seconds, which she did not point out. Her father and Kang Jin-ho met on a Saturday, in the study, alone, for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Amara sat in the courtyard the entire time and did not once try to listen. Mina, who had come specifically for this, was extremely disappointed in her. When the door opened, both men looked exactly the same as when they'd gone in, which told her nothing at all. "Well," she said. "Your father is a serious man," Jin-ho said, and went to make a phone call. Marcus Whitfield sat down on the courtyard step beside his daughter and let out a very long breath. "Dad?" He apologized, Marcus said, properly. Not the kind where they explain themselves at you for 40 minutes and call it an apology. He said one sentence, and it was the right sentence, and he didn't decorate it. He shook his head slowly. Then we spent 2 hours on everything else. And I told him that from now on, when there is something to know about my daughter, I get told at the same time she does, or I take her home, and I don't care how old she is, or how much money is in this house." He glanced sideways. He said yes, immediately. No negotiating. That's a man who's been waiting a long time for somebody to make him do the right thing. "You like him." "I did not say that. You like him." "I respect him," Marcus said, with enormous dignity. "It's a different thing, and it's considerably less comfortable." Yuna came to the second showing of Somewhere Closer, in November, and Amara knew she was there for 40 minutes before they spoke. She was standing in front of the Ansan photograph, the one that had gone into evidence, and she did not know that, and she never would. "You came?" Amara said. "I nearly didn't." Yuna kept looking at the print. "I gave a statement. Prosecutor Sim's office. 4 hours. I told them about the stairwell, the 11 photographs, all of it. And I told them I lied to a dean in 2021, which they were extremely interested in." She smiled without any humor. "I don't think anything happens to me. I think that's almost worse. Probably. I'm not going to ask you for anything today." "Good," Amara said, "because I'm still not there." Yuna nodded, and something in her shoulders eased anyway. "It's a beautiful show," she said, and left. Amara watched her go out into the street, and did not follow her, and did not feel bad about not following her, and thought that peace and forgiveness were apparently two different things, and that she was allowed to have one before she had the other. Ha Sung-ho was discharged from hospital in December and will use a cane for the rest of his life. He came to the house once, in a coat that was too big for him now, and stood in the hall, and Kang Jin-ho came out, and the two of them looked at each other for a long moment. "You're not employed here," Jin-ho said. "No, sir. Your medical costs are covered, permanently, including the boys." Jin-ho paused. "Don't come back." "No, sir." Amara caught him at the gate. "Mr. Ha." He turned, awkwardly, on the cane. "You said you'd like there to be one thing," Amara said. "The hospital. 5 hours in a corridor." "Yes, ma'am." "There's one thing," she said. He stood at the gate for a moment, with his mouth pressed together, and then he bowed to her, all the way down, which is not a thing a 56-year-old man does at a gate, and he could not straighten up again, unassisted, and she had to help him, and neither of them ever mentioned it to anybody. They found Hamin-jun a place at a university preparation program, quietly, through people who owed the family favors. He came to the house in January to say thank you, which nobody had asked him to do. He was 19, and polite, and he had grown into his father's shoulders. He sat in the good room with his back straight and drank the tea and answered every question with exactly the right number of words, and thanked Tae-min for what the family had done for him, and said he understood he had been fortunate. "He's doing well," Tae-min said afterwards, at the window, watching him walk out through the courtyard. Ha Sung-ho was standing in the hall with his cane, and he had not gone out to the car with his son, and he had not taken his eyes off him once in 90 minutes. "He's doing very well," Ha Sung-ho said. Something in the way he said it made Amara look at him. He did not look back. The last conversation happened in the study, and Amara heard it because she was in the corridor, and neither man closed the door. One of the older associates, 60-something. one of the men who had been with the family since before the courtyard was paved. "It's finished then," the old man said. "It's finished," Jinho said. 9 weeks. Prosecutors. A girl's photographs. The old man made a small sound. "The boy did it in 9 weeks, with paperwork." "He did. Your father would have finished it in a night," the old man said. Amara stood in the corridor with her hand against the wall. Nobody answered him. Not Tae-min, who was sitting right there. Not Jinho. The silence went on for 4 or 5 seconds, and then somebody poured something, and the conversation moved on to a property in Gangnam, and Amara walked away down the corridor with the feeling of having heard the first sentence of something rather than the last. The letter came at the end of January, forwarded 3 times, with an address on the front in handwriting neither of them recognized. To Amara Whitfield, formerly of Daehan Elementary. To be given to her only if she is in Korea. Miss Park was 71. She had retired in 2019. She had, she wrote, seen a photograph in a newspaper of a young woman at a gallery opening, and had gone to find her old class registers, because she does not trust her own eyes anymore, but she does trust her filing. Inside the envelope were 2 things. The first was a drawing on a square of paper that had been taped, once, to the inside of a desk. A bird with its head turned all the way round to its own back, holding an egg in its beak. Drawn by an 8-year-old in green pencil, badly, with enormous care. Amara made a sound she had not planned on making. The second thing was a folded piece of paper, sealed with a strip of tape that had gone brown, with 2 words on the outside in the same green pencil. For Tae-min, Miss Park's note said, "You gave this to me on your last day and asked me to give it to the quiet boy in the 3rd row. You told me to make sure he read it. I put it in the register drawer, and the school moved buildings that summer, and I have been carrying it in a box for 10 years, and I want you to know I did look for him, and I did not find him, and that this is the only thing in 40 years of teaching that I did not manage to do." Amara sat on the floor of the studio with her back against the filing cabinet, and the drawing in one hand, and the folded note in the other, and could not, for a long moment, do anything at all. Tae-min came home at 7 and found her there. "What is it?" She held the drawing up. He crossed the room and went down onto his knees in front of her, and took it very carefully, the way you take something that is not going to survive being taken twice, and he looked at it for a long time without saying a single word. "Sankofa," Amara said. "It's never wrong to go back for what you left behind." "I know what it is," Tae-min said. "You told me in 3rd grade. You told me in this room 4 years ago, and you thought you were telling me for the first time." She put the folded note in his hand. He read the 2 words on the outside. For Tae-min. "When did you write this?" "The last day," she said. "I don't remember writing it. I have no idea what's in it. I was 8. He turned it over twice. "Do you want to open it?" "No," Amara said. "Not tonight." "Why not?" She thought about how to say it, and in the end, she just said it. "Because there's an 8-year-old in this room who got interrupted," she said. "And I've had a lot of things opened for me this year that I didn't choose. This one waits until I choose." He set it on the light table, upright against a box of negatives, where they would both see it every day. Then he took her hand. "There's something else," he said. "And I'm telling you tonight, and I'm telling you before I've decided what to do about it, because that's the part I keep getting wrong. Okay, a request came through my father's lawyer this morning." He kept hold of her hand. "Namgi-chul has applied for a visit. He's 63, he's out in 11 months now, and he's asked to see one person." He looked at her. "You." Amara did not move. "Me. You. By name. Not my father. Not me. Amara Whitfield." Tae-min's jaw was tight. "There's a line in the application. My father's lawyer read it to me twice, because I didn't believe it the first time. Say it. Tell her I knew her father's employer before she was born." The rain started up again outside the window. Amara looked at the ring, which was sitting on the light table where it had been sitting for 11 weeks, beside a green pencil drawing of a bird looking backwards, and a folded note from an 8-year-old that neither of them had opened. "Ask me again," she said quietly. "What?" "About the ring. Ask me again. Not tonight." She was still looking at the note. "Ask me again, when there's nothing left you haven't told me. And Tae-min, I think we've both just found out that isn't going to be soon. So, 3 things, and then I'll let you go. 1. Should Amara go and see him? 14 months became 11 while we were talking. Tell me in the comments because I genuinely do not know which way this goes. 2. Yuna gave 4 hours of testimony and got nothing for it, and Amara still hasn't forgiven her. Has she earned it yet? Vote, honestly. 3. And this is the one I want the argument about. Tae-min finished this with photographs and prosecutors and 9 weeks of paperwork instead of doing what his father would have done in a night. And now the old men in that house think he's soft. Was he right? Or did he just make sure that in 11 months, when Nam Gi-chul walks out of that building, there's still somebody to walk out? Tell me below. Part 3 gets built out of your answers. Subscribe, because you'll want to be here when that note gets opened.